Greetings all. Welcome to another session here of Tuzi Talks. Today we're going to be continuing our discussion out of the Cloud and Genesee and Hamayan's text, which is right over there. If you're interested, you can go get that down at Barnes & Noble or order it at Amazon online if you are interested. Again, today we're going to be focusing on their Chapter 4, Reading and Writing to Learn. And so let's just jump right into that right now. Part of this text is broken down into talking about promoting literacy, and so we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll also talk about academic literacy for K through 8, especially they're going to be focusing on math, science, and social studies. Lastly, we're going to talk about some strategies for teaching literacy and content at the same time. That's really the bulk of what they want to talk about is the strategies for teaching. Before they jump into strategies and teaching academic literacy, they have a little section here on promoting literacy throughout the day and throughout the school. I am not a lover of promoting literacy throughout the school and trying to be more proactive or political in that sense. I teach a class, and that's all I want to do is teach my class, and yet at the same time I understand why they're wanting to do this. They're wanting to be able to help students in and out of classes, and if they work together with other teachers, they can form a more cohesive and more thorough program to help these students gain in their literacy skills so that they can be successful in the school systems. So I understand why they're doing this. And the first thing that they recommend is that you set yourself up as a language model. You should be, as a teacher, set yourself up as one who understands what this procedure is, what those skills are and struggles are that they're going to encounter. One reason why many states require second language teachers to know an additional language so that they can empathize, they can be that model for the students. I know that when I was teaching overseas, some of the things that I would teach in class would actually be some of the things that I would show students that I do. This is one of the ways that I study, and so I'm teaching techniques that way, and I become a model. I'm not just one imposing ideas and activities on them, but I'm also trying to do that myself. So that's one thing that they're trying to show that you can promote language, is to be a language model. The other thing they're suggesting, which I would definitely agree with, is that you try to engage your second language learners in class. So when they're in a separate class, when they're in, obviously if you're in your ESL class, but if you're in a bilingual system where you have these students who are learning English, but they're also trying to learn content, you engage them in your class. Don't let them sit there and try to hide or sit in the back corner. Let them know they're part of the process. Let them know they're responsible. And that would be a good thing to help them as well. Also, you want to encourage your other teachers to do the same thing. Don't let them sit in a corner and not be quote-unquote important. Third item here is to identify their language needs and recognize the items that are high-frequency items. High-frequency items come from the world of linguistics and linguistics research, where they started counting and identifying the usage of words and syntax that were more often used than others. And they try to help teachers to focus on those items. Focus on the top 3,000 words. Focus on the higher used syntax constructions, and so that your students can master those and more quickly get involved in the conversation. Be it reading or writing, be it writing or speaking, so they can be involved. So you want to identify those needs and also the high-frequency items. You can also join forces for literacy development. You, as a specialist teacher, you can also be working with teachers in other venues, in other areas within the school, and if you work together, you can help one another. So if you're going to be dealing with teaching history, you can go to the history teachers and find out what it is they're learning, what it is they're going to be teaching, and use that information for when you're going to be teaching ESL in a separate location or a separate time. So you want to work together for literacy development. This idea actually is also used in colleges, where they have something called writing across the curriculum, and all of the people throughout the college who are teachers work together with the composition department in order to help the composition department better prepare students to be able to write in all those areas. Number 5 here is to collaborate with teachers and principals and to set times. This is an excellent opportunity for you as a specialist to try to help these non-specialists deal with these students who are in their classes. And you can work with the principal. They can probably even set up, special times for you to have like in-service or training, or even a time of question and answer. Time where you can sit down and brainstorm, okay, how can we help these second language learners succeed in our classes? It's very good to be able to collaborate that way. And lastly, you should identify the status of the students. Identify the end goals. Establish regular planning times. And if you're doing this in sort of a cycle, a product life cycle type of thing, you're going to be able to go through this process over and over again and refine it and hone it down so that you can better provide for your students. And these are just some ideas for promoting literacy throughout the whole program or throughout the whole school, and not just you as the language specialist. Okay, K through 8 academic literacy. Now here, Genesee and Cloud and Hamayan wanted to focus on the things that you need to be working in for your students. And particularly, these are going to be areas in focusing on academic language. A lot of programs are going to focus less on academic language. They're going to focus more on the basic interpersonal communication skills. And so these guys here, they're saying, no, you want to focus on the academic elements, not the social. You want to make sure that you're focusing on CALP and not BICS, because that's where we want them to succeed. That's the purpose of the ESL programs in a public school. You want them to be able to focus on the databases being vocabulary database and the grammar database, and also the skills, the ability to read, write, listen, and speak, in particular the ones that are going to be important for literacy, which is speaking and writing, more likely, reading as well. In addition to recognizing the need for CALP and the database and the skills, you also need to recognize that in this area, this K through 8 academic literacy area, that you want your students to understand what's going on within the text. So you're going to talk about the different features that are involved within a given text. Additionally, you're going to want to recognize the specialized vocabulary and specialized grammar that are involved in a given area. Finally, you're going to talk about the specialized reading and writing skills and speaking and listening skills necessary for, again, the given field that you're going to be focusing on. And they focus on these 3 different areas: science, and they focus on social studies, and then mathematics. Now, in my opinion, the mathematics one is probably the easier one to grapple with. There's fewer vocabulary and syntax items that are necessary, but they do exist. So this is probably the one where I would begin to do more of my work, because they're going to be able to understand it more quickly. But it is specialized vocabulary. The other ones also have specialized information, so you want to try to find out what those are. Okay, some strategies for teaching literacy and content. One of the things that you should be able to do is identify what the language is of your students. Identify what their literacy abilities are. Identify what the content requirements that they have that they're going to be learning. And so you should focus on an area that is specific for this field, again, math or science or social studies, and you should also identify high-frequency items. High-frequency items are the things that you're going to be looking for to push first so that they can grab those. They're going to be using those more often. High-frequency vocabulary, and again, high-frequency syntax. The key here, and I would agree with this very much, is to front-load it. And by front load, it means before you go actually teaching about the history of the United States, or the history of the slave trade, or the history of the gold rush, that you give them an opportunity to pre-learn a lot of the vocabulary that they're going to be needing, a lot of the specialized words that they're going to be needing, a lot of the specialized grammar that may be involved in this learning, so that when they're actually learning this, they're going to be better able to understand what's going on. So look for the high-frequency vocab and syntax. Teach these items in context, and also try to monitor the affective filter. Remember, the affective filter is the amount of pressure or stress that they have. Too much stress, and they're not going to learn. Not enough stretch, and it probably means that they're bored. So you want to try to keep an eye on the affective filter. The other thing that you could also be doing is using cognates whenever possible. You can find a similar word that has a similar meaning, let them use that so that they can learn to define words in English as opposed to defining a word in their own language. Nothing wrong with defining it in your own language, but it's better to learn the cognates. Another thing that you can do to help students learn is to allow students to define the definitions. Let them use their language to define a word. It's an excellent opportunity for them to try to figure out not only what's going on, but to articulate that in their own language. And then lastly, they talk about using word studies. Opportunities for students to learn about language just through their own investigation. Another strategy that was talked about in the text was the Freyer method. And I've never heard of this before outside of this text. The Freyer method, they had a grid that they had talked about, but they're basically when you're using and introducing new words, you want to provide a definition, you want to provide characteristics of what this word means, you want to provide some uses of this, some examples of this word in a sentence. You can also provide examples of how not to use this word in a sentence. And those are the four basic components of the Freyer method. You provide definition, characteristics, good examples, and then bad examples. In doing so, you're going to be able to help students understand the word better and also give opportunity to master the language faster, master those words faster. You can also have students offer their own examples. I had a friend who would give the words out to the students. They would create their own definitions, and then they would create their own test questions. And he would use those test questions in their vocabulary test if they had any. It's a very good idea. Another thing beyond the Freyer method is to use scaffolding. And scaffolding, I hope you've heard of before. It's that thing that you put along the side of a building. It's also a way to help someone. You come alongside and you help them. And so that's what this scaffolding is all about. Thank you, Vygotsky. You can use things like graphic organizers, or you can include some guided reading or guided writing. So that as they're reading, you're giving them assistance. This is before they do the actual reading. You may want to be able to make a script for them. Or frames. Now, a script is kind of a predetermined process where they can walk through this to help them learn what it is that they're going to be doing. Script as in a script, like in a play where you have these words that you need to memorize. Okay, you may want to provide them a template that it's kind of like a frame. You're giving them a little step-by-step process that they would actually go through, whether they're reading or they're writing or whether they're doing a science project or trying to identify something. You give them a little template. You can also encourage cooperative learning, although competition is certainly a good thing as well. But if they realize that they can work together to solve a problem or a riddle, they're going to work together with each other. Lower that affective filter and realize that they're not in competition. Lastly, keeping a learning log or a journal is an excellent way for students to express their frustrations, express their questions in a non-threatening way. You may not even grade the paper. You may not even view the paper, but it's a chance for them to do that. And you may decide that you're going to view the paper. You're going to give them opportunity to share and not be graded, but just to be able to talk. You're not going to necessarily correct it, but it's an opportunity for them to share and learn, and at the same time, they're going to be learning to write. Some extended academic learning activity. One is to do research-based things. It's a learning activity where you give them a project, and they may not know the actual scientific learning process. You may be able to teach them that, but you may give them then something to go research. Why is this item better than that item? Why do some people prefer wearing sunglasses and other people don't? I don't know what it is, but you can do some type of research and get them to continue learning, but in more of an outside process. You can give them field trips that they can go on. Again, we're talking about sunglasses. Maybe you can go someplace where they actually make them, or you actually can talk to people who build them because they're polarized and what polarization is all about. And again, I don't know exactly where you'd want to go, but you go somewhere where they're outside and they're still trying to use the same language as they did while they were in class. Lastly, you can do things like project-based learning. And Pride and project-based learning, as I've mentioned before, is where they're focusing on the project. They're not focusing necessarily on language, not even focusing on content, but they're given opportunities to use the language in more of a practical way as they try to build or complete whatever project this is. And I would recommend that you make the projects useful and practical to them. And those are some extended activities that you could be doing. All right, so that's all I have for this particular chapter about reading and writing to learn. Again, the focus is not necessarily on reading or writing, but it's in the learning process. And so they're going hand in hand where they're trying to teach content at the same time that they're trying to teach reading and writing. If you do have any questions, please feel free to send a note downstairs or shoot me an email. Thanks for stopping by. Talk to you later.